How strong were the Vikings? According to the sagas, being strong was seen as an important quality, and very often the hero of the story is described as being physically strong. And we have, of course, Thor, or Thor, the god, who is extremely strong. At the age of 12, he could lift 10 bear skins on one hand. And the sagas provide us with some interesting records of feats of strength. And I will go through 10 of those, or well, 10 if we count our friend Thor and his amazing strength at the age of 12, including one done by my ancestor, Egil Skallagrimsson. And by the way, my name is Bjørn, and I'm a historical novelist. I live here in Norway. And yeah, welcome to the channel. So, let's start. Mekolv, he lifted a kettle used for brewing ale or beer. It was filled with 2 buckets of sand, so not normal buckets. That was like you could say a measurement of volume. With the kettle, that would have been around 300 kilos or a little bit more than 300 kilos. After he had done that, Thorolv tried, and Thorolv, he wanted, of course, to be a little bit better, so he did it with only 2 fingers. And then Orm, Thorolv's relative, he had to try, but he used only 1 finger. And here's the funny part. He hid his finger after he had lifted. He was very shameful. And probably he hurt his finger, which was, yeah, bit of a disgrace. Yeah, I'm walking up the path here to see if I can find some chanterelles. I often come up here to look for chanterelles. I'm not the only one doing that, so well, let's see if there are any left. You might have noticed that I've spiderweb. I have hurt myself. And if you stick around and watch to the end, I will tell you what happened. Because there's a lesson there. A lesson to be learnt. I certainly learnt my lesson. The Norse, they would lift big rocks and kettles, as I mentioned, filled with sand. And you would fill the kettle up with sand more and more, and then make it heavier. They would also lift animals, like the bull on the farm, you know, the biggest bull, and they would carry it around and stuff like that. And I have also noticed, of course, that most of these recorded feats of strength, they are done by Icelandic people, simply because they have the Icelandic sagas. So more was written down among people living on Iceland. Strength in sports is quite important in our culture here in Scandinavia. I will say, as a powerlifter myself, we have the world's best powerlifters. At least we are right at the top. Yeah, it's important to us. There aren't any chanterelles left, except the very tiny ones. That was a disappointment. It was the same Orm, the guy I mentioned, that carried the mast of the giant longship Ormen Lange, In English that would translate to the long serpent. So that was a giant longship, and Orm, he had 60 men lift the mast up on his shoulders, or one shoulder, we don't know exactly, and then he walked with the mast, it says 3 feet, so not necessarily 3 steps, but a distance of 3 feet. And it also says that after that he was never the same. So he probably injured himself doing that. A mast like that, given that it was made out of spruce, like the trees surrounding me here, would have weighed almost a ton. So yeah, that was quite a demanding thing to do. So yeah, Orm, he was extremely strong. That was number 5, I think. And number 6 is a funny one. So a man called Finnboge, he traveled to Greece and he visited the king. And maybe he was asked to show them how strong he was. So Finnboge, he lifted the throne with the king in it. And it was seen as a feat of strength. And of course we don't know how heavy the king was or how heavy the throne was. And it's a little bit unclear whether he lifted the whole thing with, I don't know, the people surrounding it somehow, or holding on to the throne, or if it was just only the king in the throne. It's a little bit unclear. But yeah, I guess the king there, he got a little bit surprised. And it's funny how these feats of strength are described in the sagas as, you know, almost an act of rebellion, or there is something about it that kind of, it's a very attractive human trait, I think, to just, there's a bit of spite in there, there's a bit of courage, and there's a bit of rebellion, and you know, like the attitude that I'll show them. And then I think we are at number 7, and that would be Grete, a well-known, a very strong man. He was known for his strength, and he on one occasion picked up a bull and carried it back to his farm. Speaking of bulls, my forefather actually, Egil Skallagrimson, he was also known for his strength, and on one occasion apparently he ripped the head off a bull with his bare hands. I must say this about Egil Skallagrimson: he was special. He was a colorful character. Let's just put it that way. So yeah, that poor bull got his head ripped off by Egil. Now Egil's father, Skallagrim, that's just the horses on the field that you're hearing. Yeah, Skallagrim, he on one occasion he lifted a rock, one of those stones used for blacksmithing. So in many cases they didn't have like an anvil, you know, so they would use rocks for blacksmithing, and he lifted one of those rocks and carried it to the forge. And it is said that not even 4 men could lift that stone. So he was a strong man. And then we have, of course, Grete again. He carried 4 rams, and they were tied together by the horns in pairs. So he carried 4 of them. And I don't know how big they were, but that was seen as the equivalent of carrying a bull. And I think that was the 10th. And these are in no particular order, of course, but I would say that, you know, the most famous feat of strength is when, you know, Orm, he walked 3 feet with the mast of Ormen Lange, that giant longship. So, yeah. What happened to my eye? Well, if you're on Patreon, you already know. There is a video on Patreon from the Viking festival that I attended. And yeah, I got into this crazy fist fight with lots of other people. No, just kidding. That's not what happened. I was taking a swim in the sea early morning, you know, about a week ago, and as I was coming up from the sea, I slipped on the flat rocks and I went head and shoulder first into the rock. The doctor said that you could have died, because I did not become unconscious, but you know, that can happen, and if you then fall into the water, you can drown. And this was early in the morning, nobody was around, so yeah, be careful out there. It's going to leave a scar, but that's okay. Okay, you know what? I want to ask you again, if I haven't, I think I've done it already, please click that subscribe button. This place here is authentic, it's real, there is no AI, there is no fake stuff here. And if you value that, please let YouTube know by subscribing. And there should also be another video or a couple of other videos popping up here on the end screen that you might enjoy. Thank you for watching and have a wonderful day.